Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So one thing I learned the hard way, and I continue to have to relearn this lesson because it's such a painful realization, is that no matter how friendly any of your colleagues are, you can never trust them 100%. When push comes to shove, uh, employees will always put their own interests ahead of everything else. And I've learned the hard way that you have to treat working relationships almost like you're buying a car. Or, for example, when I negotiated my lease here at this house, right? I live with the owner of this house. We can be friendly to each other, right? We do have a lot of friendly discussions, but it's a tricky, right? We just had a Oh, I'm recording a video. So, oh no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah, yeah, yeah. See, this is one of those things that you have to make sure to at the right boundaries. That was actually the owner of the house right now, and obviously I can't let her hear too much of this stuff. But I learned that you cannot 100% take everything at face value. And unfortunately, it's such a tough lesson to swallow that I allow myself to relearn the same painful lesson over and over and over again, paying huge tuition costs every fucking time I have to relearn this lesson, and then cursing the people who taught me the lesson at the end of it. I'm going to talk about a few examples. My first job that I took here in the Phoenix area was at a tutoring center, and I learned the hard way, and unfortunately, not really learned because I can't seem to manage it, that I have to put things in writing. If it didn't happen in writing, it might as well have never have happened, right? And where I got really burned with this is that I would talk to my boss about something, and I thought I had squared something away, and I really didn't. And it's really tough. You got, especially at the tutoring center, I really got along with all of my students, right? I didn't want to rock that boat. What had transpired was that I had a colleague, or multiple colleagues actually, who had differences in family dynamics, right? I had a colleague who had split custody of some kids with his former spouse. And then I had one colleague who was still getting along with her parents. She was a little bit younger than me. And then I had a couple older colleagues, and they wanted to spend time with their family. And so I was there during the whole Christmas holiday. My one colleague took his kids to Disney World, which is great, which is great. But when I asked for some time off, I asked for the day after the lunar eclipse. Now, I made the mistake of saying that it was to stay up the night before for the lunar eclipse. And perhaps my boss decided that it was not a big deal for me to pull an all nighter and come in anyway. I made the mistake of not asking for it in writing. That was the mistake I made. And the week before that, he scheduled me for the next day. And what's really frustrating is that we didn't get our schedules until the Saturday before the week. And I asked him, hey, what's up with this? I thought we talked about it. And he said how this was a really valuable student. You know, they bring in a lot of other students and all that. And meanwhile, I had talked to him like a month earlier. And I learned that despite filling in for all of my colleagues for their Disney, their Christmas, it's not a fun time to work at the tutoring center because you might be here during the week, but you get like 6 hours of work, 8 hours of work for that week, and your week is still shot, right? It's not like it's any easier to do 6 hours compared to doing 12 hours, right? A lot of people don't seem to appreciate that, right? They say you make X dollars per hour. There's a very big difference between making $20 an hour, but you only have 1 hour and you got to commute in there versus $20 an hour, but you get an 8 hour shift, right? There's a huge difference to that. I don't know why there's so much discussion about how much per hour. I'd rather hear about how much you can actually make in total, right? And how much time you get to yourself, right? But it's one of those tough lessons I can learn. But even to this day, I don't like to get things in writing. I'm having a good, healthy conversation with a boss. The last thing I want to do is to pick up that pen, right? It's like declaring war almost. Unfortunately, that was not the first or the last time I ever ran into drama like that. I've done some tutoring on my own, finding clients, on Craigslist and on Facebook Marketplace. And sometimes I run into tricky people, right? The most common issue is that people will cancel at the last minute. Oh, you got to have a cancellation policy. Yeah, when you're just meeting somebody for the first time and it's shaky whether or not you're going to get any business in the first place. What do? Take out a 20-page contract, right? Keep in mind that cancellation policies are not as straightforward as they sound, right? You could say that, oh, if you cancel within the last 24 hours, you still have to pay for the lesson, but it's rarely that straightforward, right? A lot of times parents will give excuses for, oh my god, this is so important for my kid, it's their first time doing whatever, right? Or they'll change the schedule in a funny way. Sometimes I had a tutoring client from 6 to 8 or something like that p.m., right? And he asked if I could start at 7. I don't want to end that session at 9, and the parents know that. They're hoping for me to say that's not possible for me. And in their mind, oh, they didn't cancel, right? I canceled on them, right? And so it just goes to show that these people could be really friendly to you, but they have their own interests at heart, right? You know, at uh, I was just talking to a colleague at Central Arizona College, the campus where I record a lot of videos nowadays. It was at the beginning of the semester. We were talking about covering each other's shifts and all what we could cover. We weren't really discussing any details at the moment. During the conversation, I forgot where we were during the conversation. He heard something that I said. He was about to respond to it, and he started going, "Well, I could do." Oh, what did you say? He heard what I had said because he had started to respond to it. He asked me to repeat, I think, in large part to fish for something that I might say. It's kind of like when you talk to the police, right? You got to be careful. They always fish for little nuggets of things that they could use to incriminate you, right? I really got the sense that my colleague was playing that game. It gave me a really bad taste in my mouth when I heard it. He was manipulating the conversation. I really shouldn't have repeated it. I should have just sat there in silence and waited. I read studies. Studies show that if you wait in silence for 4 seconds, people get really uncomfortable when they open their mouths. I should have done that. Unfortunately, I didn't outwait him that time. And so I've learned that if you expect any sort of return favor, you definitely need to get that in writing. And one time I got really burned with this. Hold on, I'm getting my notes because I wrote down a few things I wanted to talk about so I wouldn't forget. Um, I had I had filled in for a couple colleagues who wanted to take some time away. This is at that same tutoring center in 2023, there was a Taylor Swift concert in the Phoenix area. And then not long after that, in 2023, the Super Bowl was played here in Phoenix. And those 2 weeks were just really nasty weeks to be in Phoenix. A lot of traffic. And not to mention the attendance at the tutoring center was not good, right? We have a lot of students who are relatively well off. They might not have gone to the stadium, but they have family members who went to the stadium. So they had tricky family arrangements. A lot of my students went to see Taylor Swift, right? This was actually before Taylor Swift started dating Travis Kelce. There were two separate events at the time. But both weeks were really annoying as fuck to be in Phoenix. I so much would have loved to take those 2 weeks off because I would have, if in an ideal world, I would have traveled out of Phoenix before those weeks even began. Maybe spend some time in Salt Lake, maybe LA, maybe even down in Mexico, just to get away from all that drama. I don't like traffic. I'm autistic, and those things drive me nuts. And but I let my colleagues have it in large part because I was hoping for a return favor in the future. but I made the mistake of not picking up the pen. And so, in fact, not long after I did that favor, I got my hours cut. You know what happened? I landed the job at Phoenix College not long after that Taylor Swift drama. And so I think my boss sensed that I have more. He doesn't, it's kind of funny. He doesn't like to hire people who have a second job, in large part because he wants to control the situation. I really got the sense of that toward the end of my tenure at the tutoring center. It's kind of toxic. I've since discovered that's not an unusual situation at a lot of workplaces. And earlier today, I was reading about workplaces that have pizza parties, and those things really drive me nuts because I have allergies to milk products. And so a pizza party as a reward, not only does it not reward me, but it kind of punishes me. I actually got written up at a yet a different tutoring center because we had a team meeting and I didn't realize pizza would be served until the time of the meeting, and it made me uncomfortable. I had to keep a safe distance, and then I walked out of the meeting. I told them, I don't think there's very much going on in this meeting. If there really are important minutes, why don't you email me? You know what my email is, right? I apologize. This is really discomforting. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I can still enjoy pizza with my eyes, right? So thank you so much for your thoughts. I enjoyed seeing the pizza, but this is too much. Um, too much worry for me. I don't think this is very productive. But if you have important minutes, you can email me. You can call me. Right. And I walked out of there. I didn't want to argue with them, so I just ended it with "you can call me" rather than asking them. And so I walked out. A couple days later, I get written up for a couple of details that nobody ever gets written up for. Right. We were supposed to get there 15 minutes before classes start. Maybe one of those days I got there like 12 minutes before. I don't know how my boss even tracked that. He added that in there. He added that I said a couple of things that were a little bit personal that I don't even know if I said or not. But I knew he was upset I didn't go to the meeting. He couldn't say that, right? He recognizes legally he probably couldn't get away with saying that. And I made the mistake of when I walked away from that meeting, I should have followed up with an email. I apologize, blah, blah, blah. Due to food allergies, this is a tricky meeting. I wish we could have discussed the pizza beforehand. We could have handled it differently. I should have done that. And so I learned the hard way that the workplace can almost be like a paper war, right? You got to keep your documents in check, almost like a I wish it didn't have to behave like that. That's why I really love my art projects. When I amass my personal wealth with my art projects, I'd probably still continue to take jobs like that, but I can take them for fun, right? If somebody wants to kick me out over a food allergy, I wouldn't be too bad. I might speak up still because I know other people might not be in the same privilege as I am at that point, right? But I wouldn't be emotional about it. Hey, this is what it is, right? And in fact, I would love to leave a job like that because who wants to befriend somebody who has issues like that? Now, unfortunately, there's a huge educational gap because I earlier today when I watched that video, I responded to it. It was a YouTube video about pizza at the parties at the workplace, and I responded to that. I explaining that, and one of the YouTube I don't know if it was the original content creator or another user replied, "What are you talking about? You're allergic to something else that somebody is eating?" Oh yeah, don't you remember 4 years ago there was something else that could make you sick that could travel up to 6 feet in the air? Did you forget that already? And he didn't make the connection. And I don't think the guy on YouTube was trying to gaslight me. I think he genuinely had an educational gap. And that's just really scary that we have so many people walking around, some of whom are in control of our lives, who have gaps in just day to day living, just like that, right? I had another colleague. This was when I was working at a tech startup, and he had manipulated me, played me. What had happened was he He came up to me while I was eating lunch. It was a couple weeks before Thanksgiving. We had this rotation, bug fix rotation, where every week one of us would be responsible for returning reports of bugs in our code. And he asked me if I could switch the weeks with him. It was getting close to Thanksgiving. I knew I wasn't going anywhere Thanksgiving. And so I didn't think much about agreeing to it. Little did I know the reason he wanted to switch was because he had gotten a week that would be much more busier. He knew about the company. He had been working there for 2 years. I was new at that point. When he came back from his Thanksgiving vacation, I was trying to confront him about that. And so, long story short, our relationship became very icy after that. And I think that's part of the reason I ended up having to leave that job. I mean, I found other work eventually, but he played me and it costed me my job. Let's put it, well, actually, it didn't really cost me. Right? I should have been, it's one of those things I got to take things carefully. When somebody asks me for a favor, look into why they're asking, look into what's in it for me, and then negotiate, right? I generally try not to just instinctively say yes anymore, even if it sounds like a no-brainer, right? So my colleague wants to go see a Taylor Swift concert. I'll read more into it. When is Taylor Swift going to be here? What's for the concert? What's my colleague getting out of it? And what can I ask for it? And more importantly, pick up the pen, right? I learned the hard way that lesson. Now, one of my least favorite workplace policies is some workplaces should be in quotes, to donate your vacation time to one of your colleagues. I made the mistake. I had a colleague who had a sister who had long COVID, and she wanted to go take care of her kids. I made the mistake of thinking, because this is 2021. At the time, I had just broken up with my girlfriend because of COVID concerns, and I discovered she wasn't a good match anyway. And I mistakenly thought that when my colleague is done with taking care of her niece and nephew, that maybe we can connect and I can get to know a few people out of her, right? That was my logic at the time. I started by giving her one vacation day, but you know how quickly days go, right? And by the next day, she was asking me for more. And so I gave her the rest of my vacation days, which was, I think, 6 days altogether. And long story short, I never really talked to her anymore. I didn't get to know her sister or anybody in her family. And to add insult to injury, I was programming an AI for the game of Ticket to Ride Poland. And I asked if she would play a couple rounds of my AI to see how that game would go, just to make sure there's no issues with the AI and all that. And she was too busy to even do that. And I was still very upset until I talked to a friend of mine at a board game meetup. I got a board game meetup I go to every Monday night, and there's a girl there that I like, and we trust each other. And she says that I don't have to worry about it anymore. I asked her why, and she said I might have saved. You got to remember, this is in 2020 when COVID was all the rage. My friend at the board game meetup said that I might have saved somebody's life, and not to worry about it. She'll have to answer to her maker someday about why she wouldn't return such a basic favor of even trying out an AI. So I guess that's right. But it goes to show that all of these people have their own interests at heart, and you got to be careful about how much you're willing to trust any of these people. And hopefully, one of these days, when these people meet their maker, they won't be able to collect their 200 tantalum coins, right? And they'll go straight to hell and won't pass heaven and collect those 200 tantalum coins, right? This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.